Who turned Africa into a dark continent? It is a question which I never have found an answer to. There is no more beautiful a continent than Africa, as anyone who comes here finds.
We now have a generation that believes everything we did by colonizing. Yes, it is true.
Capitalism is new to Africa. Before colonization.
Hello YouTube family, welcome back to Brilliant Real's YouTube channel, and on this channel we're going to discuss about how colonization has shaped the lives of both the black and the white people, and how it has affected everything from money, food, land, education and family. Also, we are going to talk about on how to address these issues, what the healing process looks like. Kindly remember to subscribe, share, like, watch and comment down below. Let us interact through the videos. Thank you.
Who turned Africa into a dark continent? It is a question which I never have found an answer to. There is no more beautiful a continent than Africa, as anyone who comes here finds. But you had to convert it as an image of a barbaric continent which had to be relieved from its own culture, from its own history, from its own. Who created the term witch doctor? As if the medicine, which was a part of the cultural history or of the history of Africa, was part of witchcraft. We have been taught the language of subservience. We have been taught to hate ourselves. In order to create the other, in order to create a rationale for power and for empire building.
So many of these countries around the world are incapable of governing themselves, then it's time for us to put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You could say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens, because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes. Enough. Because if you go to these countries and you see how they suffer under absolutely corrupt, made-up governments that are just criminal syndicates, the people of Africa, the people of Latin America, a lot of them deserve better. Now, some countries...
We now have a generation that believes everything we did by colonizing... Yes, it is true. They think everything about colonization was wrong. It wasn't. There were some terrible things and there were some good things to come out of it. And that is about properly acknowledging your past.
Education.
Yes, completely.
Sanitation.
Transportation.
Yeah. There was so much that we brought to communities. But
you see, you're typical of what we're talking about.
No, I'm saying that colonization, the empire was wrong. It was wrong, full stop. That's, the things that Britain might have done.
But that's very much through your modern sensibilities,
yes.
You might say that, because we wouldn't now routinely go into other countries.
It was a profoundly racist set of basically invasions of other people, where we subjugated people to our rule and sort of made them work for us. It was completely
made their countries work.
But imagine yourself in the shoes of a 13-year-old boy hearing you say that.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
What do they then... How do they then carry that through life?
Well,
in terms of who I am as a Brit.
But it's not about...
We had racist ancestors.
Say it,
but Bev...
But I'm saying that we hear much more of that than we do about the benefits of that period of time.
Well, because I don't think there were benefits. I think that we have to be completely...
Of course there were.
So you benefits to us?
I don't think there were.
There were benefits to us.
A lot of those countries did not... Jonathan, those countries...
It absolutely does.
Those countries did not have money. They did not have the creativity. They did not have people in positions of power
Of course they had creativity in those countries. They just didn't live like Britain did. It doesn't make it worse. It just makes it different.
So it's okay to live without education, and it's okay to live without a transportation system, is it?
They did have education. It just wasn't our education system. They had language. It wasn't our language.
This cultural
medicine we brought to
precisely what we have.
Yes.
I don't know. Look.
One thing about racist people is that they always have the same language. It's never new. It's either they call you a monkey, which is kind of interesting because, yes, you might have black monkeys, but you also have pink monkeys that don't look like me, they look like you, right? Or they will say you have low IQ. Or the question is, low IQ, according to who? what type of IQ, what type of intelligence, because there are different types of intelligence. Just because you're good academically doesn't automatically mean you're intelligent socially. You understand? So, for example, you might have an Asian guy that might be ruthlessly intelligent academically. Not even academically. You might be ruthlessly intelligent in science, in a specific field in science. Does it automatically mean he's also very intelligent socially? Oftentimes, that is not the case. Now, somebody that might not be good academically could be very good socially, which, by the way, social intelligence and social ability to network is actually a bigger indicator of success. So anyway, that's a question for another day. But for this video, I want to address this comment here because I've been seeing this for the longest period of time, even before I came on TikTok. Europeans, white people, Asians, Latinos, Arabs, the people of color, right? They love to insult Africans because we live in huts, apparently. And I want to dive deeper into this. Okay, but this comment came from somebody who I assume lives in Europe, right? But the thing is this. Let's get deeper into this topic because there's so many things that I feel like a lot of people don't cover. You see, one thing about me is you are not going to insult me for something that is deeply in my culture. You're not going to embarrass me as Kingsley, as a proud African man, of things that are deeply rooted in my culture. Now, one thing people don't seem to understand about huts is that huts are deeply rooted in symbolism in African culture. Aside from that, a lot of huts in general, serve a very practical problem in the context of Africa. And by the way, from North Africa to South Africa, every country has its own symbolism of huts. There are different types of hut design, and that's beautiful. That is a uniquely African thing. So do not let anybody with one or two brain cells make you feel less than because you live in huts. But also, why is that a bad thing? How is that an evil thing that people are living in huts? It solves a problem unique to them. Huts are cheap. They are easy to set up. They are economical. They solve your housing need. They are practical. How's that a bad thing? Isn't that intelligent? Instead of living outside, living in the elements, you build something to protect yourself, your family. How's that a negative thing? It solves their problem. But you see, another thing a lot of non-Africans seem to forget is that in the context of Africa, materialism is very new to us. Oh yes, capitalism is very new to Africa. It's very new to Africa. That's what people need to understand. Capitalism is new to Africa. Before colonization, the system of Africa was very communal. It's very communal. It wasn't about having the flashiest stuff. No, it's new. It was all about coming together, staying together, building something that sustains everybody. It was a very communal, tribal way of living. Colonization came in and fucked everything up, and here we are today, right? The thing is this. Huts. Let's talk about it. In the context of Europe, to the Europeans, I love to talk down on huts, right? Oh my God, you're living in huts, you're living in huts. Let's break it down. So, hut. Mind you, the person that you're making fun of living in a hut, they own that hut. It's theirs. They own it. Now, to some of you that are living in Europe, most of you, the average European, average American living in America or Europe, most of you can't even own your house. I mean, I see this on the news all the time of Europeans and Americans complaining about the ridiculous housing, ridiculous house prices. They will never be able to buy a house because the boomers fucked it up for everybody. That person you're making fun of for living in a hut owns the hut. It's their hut. It's their home. It might not be sexy to you because you have a very materialistic perspective, but it's their own. It's their hut. So who's winning? You cannot own your own house in America or Europe. The person in Africa who you're making fun of owns their hut. Who's truly winning? You, on the other hand, you have to pay rent, you have to pay mortgage for the rest of your life, if you're even lucky. But the person in Africa who lives in a hut owns their hut. Some of you, you have to, even in Europe and Africa and America, you have, even in Asia now I'm hearing, you have to even have roommates. Grown-ass people having roommates so that you can afford to pay for your 1 or 2 bedroom house. This is the reality across Europe, across the Western world. So when you come online as a racist person and you're making fun of Africans for living in huts, guess what? They own that hut. Most likely, you don't even own your own home. You don't even own your own land. You don't even own anything. So who's really winning? That's point number one. The African that you're making fun of owns that hut. You, on average, cannot own a house. You can't buy a house. You have to rent for the rest of your life. Sometimes you need to get roommates so that you can afford to share one house or afford one house. That's point number one. Point number two. Oftentimes, the person, the African that you guys are making fun of for living in a hut, not only do they own that hut, they oftentimes own that land too. Did you know that? Did you know that the African that you're making fun of for living in a hut not only owns the hut, they also own that land? Maybe not as an individual, but that community that lives in huts on that land. It's their land. It's their ancestral land. How many Europeans or how many Americans can say they own that land? They own a land. How many? But the African you're pointing at, making fun of, and your family lives in huts. Yeah, but they own the land. You don't, most likely. You cannot own a land in your... How many Europeans own land? How many Americans own land? It's for the rich, like the really rich. The average American cannot afford land, doesn't own land. The average European cannot buy land, cannot own land. The average African has land. The average African can own land, can own buildings. So who's really winning? That's point number two. Point number three. Point number three. The food that person you're laughing at in Africa for living in a hut, it's organic. They grow their food. The vegetables are fresh. The fish is fresh. The meat is fresh. You, on the other hand, in America, you're battling processed foods. Same in Europe. Maybe Europe not as bad as America, but oftentimes you cannot grow your own food. Where is the space? But the African who lives in a hut, who you make fun of, can and does. So who's also winning? The fourth point for this video is this. You said, but your family lives in a hut. But guess what? They have a family. They have a strong community. They do. So who's really winning there as well? When the average American, the average Europe has family issues. I mean, the number of Americans and Europeans that talk about their family, you would think they're talking about their boss. You would think they're talking about their colleagues. Meanwhile, they're talking about their father, mother, brothers, and sisters. I see my father and my mother once a year. I don't talk to my father anymore. I don't talk to my mother. I see my brother twice a year, if at all. Jeez, I haven't talked to my brother in a long time. I haven't talked to my mother in a long time. That's almost unheard of in Africa unless your parents were deadbeats. So when you're making fun of them, they have community. They have family. Mental health exists, absolutely, but trust me, when you are with your community and you're bonded together, the mental health typically dips. That's why if you look at depression rates and mental health crisis across the world, the Western Hemisphere, the Western world struggles with mental health a lot, despite the fact that you are making fun of Africans living in huts. Mental health, depression, loneliness, anxiety, and all sort of bipolar is on the rise in the Western world, despite you having all the technologies and everything else. So it tells me something. There has to be something to be said for community. So it's not about having the fanciest buildings in the world. Don't get me wrong. I would say, yes, absolutely, some technology is needed, some healthcare is needed, absolutely, and it's happening. But you don't get to be a racist and point finger at Africans living in huts as if it's a bad thing. When you look bar for bar, that African who lives in the hut is probably living a much better life than you are. That's what you guys don't act. That's one thing you guys don't realize. That African who lives in a hut in Africa somewhere is probably living a much better life, peaceful life than you. Oh, did I also mention taxes? Now, I'm sure they pay some type of tax, but I don't think it's a tax that's going to keep them hooked for the rest of their life. So I ask you one more time, who's really winning? To the racists out there, you know, you picked on the wrong guy. You're not going to make me feel like you're better than me for your racist tropes, living in a hut. What's wrong with huts? I've lived in a hut before. It's practical. In my village, in Nigeria, we have huts. We do. What's that? It serves. Huts are practical solutions to a problem. Period.
Colonization was not all about owning land. It was all about having a place to call a home, having a shelter, whereby the African people valued their huts as it promoted the sustainable development goal of life. Sustainable livelihood matters. And colonization, it shaped the world in different ways, especially to the people in Africa and diaspora. For them, it meant that having been colonized, it means that they lost their ancestral land and freedom, slavery and forced labor, broken family structure, and stolen education and culture. Whereas for the the colonizers, it meant access to wealth and generational wealth, access to land, access to privileges and control over institutions, and also there is that superiority in the ratio. Colonization, it was not only about owning land, but it was about the power, control, and the profit, whereby it reshaped the world into different forms. Colonization involved extraction of the resource from the African continent and exploitation of labor. This reshapes the societies whereby the colonizer benefited. Let's talk about the capitalism. Capitalism limited the access to local development within the African continent, and it benefited the white people, whereby they had access to global trade and dominance over the country. Materialism was associated with civilization, whereby the produced goods and luxury were enjoyed by the white people from the colonized labor. And also the issue about food, whereby the African people were forced to eat the processed food instead of their local organic food. And also there was issue with depression, traumas, brutality. Africans were designed into taxes that Africans were designed into were fueled into poverty to were taxed into poverty to fuel the colonial system, and education was designed to promote interest in the colonial rules. Lastly, colonization has broke a lot, but as Black resilience, we can fight back. If we really want to change the world, we should put the trust first. Kindly remember to subscribe, watch, comment down below, like, share. And I believe that we cannot change the past, but we can build the future together.